What would you do if someone you loved, someone close to you, disappeared without a trace? Imagine a vibrant, beautiful, smart teenager, full of promise, vanishing in the blink of an eye. No warning, no explanation, no answers. It's every parent's nightmare, every teacher's fear, and every teenager's worst-case scenario. That's exactly what happened to Emily Parker, a 17-year-old girl who, one fateful day, simply vanished while on a class trip. No one saw it coming. No one had any answers. Just silence. But here's where it gets even more chilling. Years after Emily's disappearance, something happens that no one expected. Her locket, the very one she wore every single day, appears in a pawn shop. Yes, you heard that right. A simple piece of jewelry that was once a cherished keepsake, a symbol of Emily's youth, turns up in the most unexpected of places, an old, dusty pawn shop tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. How did it get there? And what does it mean? Is this a clue? Is this a sign? Could it finally lead to the truth behind Emily's disappearance? But, before you think you know what's going on, take a moment to think. This isn't just a story about a missing person. This is a story that will keep you up at night, wondering about the secrets that people hide, the lies we tell ourselves, and the things we overlook in the search for answers. Because, let's be real for a second, life doesn't always make sense, does it? And sometimes, the answers we seek are hidden in the most unexpected places, at the most unexpected times. But the biggest question still remains: what happened to Emily Parker, and who is responsible for what she went through? Now, I want you to really think about that for a moment. Imagine you're the one standing in that pawn shop, holding her locket in your hands, knowing it's the very same piece of jewelry that her family, her friends, and her classmates all recognized as part of her. Your mind races. Could this be a clue to finding out what happened? Or is it just a cruel coincidence, a strange twist in an already tragic story? The answers seem just out of reach, and yet, this locket, this small, delicate object, could be the key to unlocking everything. But before you jump to conclusions, let's slow down and start from the beginning. Who was Emily Parker? Why was she so special to the people around her? And why did she disappear, leaving everyone who knew her torn between hope and devastation? This isn't just about a missing girl. It's about a community left in the dark, clinging to the smallest bits of hope, and the terrifying possibility that someone out there knows far more than they're letting on. In the next few minutes, you're going to hear the full story, the story of how Emily's disappearance has haunted her family, her friends, and her entire school. You'll find out about the events leading up to her vanishing, and you'll learn about the strange circumstances surrounding that fateful day. But most importantly, I want to take you on a journey to understand the mystery behind the locket. What does it mean? How did it end up in that pawn shop? What does it tell us about the people who were closest to Emily, and what secrets have been buried for years? I know what you're thinking right now. You've heard stories like this before, right? Cases where people go missing, only to reappear years later with no explanation. It seems like something you've seen in a movie, or heard about in a true crime documentary. But this one is different. It's personal. It's real. And the more you dig into this story, the more you'll realize that this isn't just a missing person's case, it's a puzzle with pieces scattered across time, waiting to be put together. You see, when Emily disappeared, her family was left in turmoil. Her parents, desperate for answers, turned to anyone and everyone who could help. The police, the media, private investigators, everyone was involved, but no one could find a single trace of Emily. The only clue they had was that locket, a small heart-shaped pendant, which she always wore. It was like a part of her, always around her neck, a reminder of her innocence and the love she carried with her. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, that locket was the last connection anyone had to her. Her friends never saw it again, her family couldn't find it among her belongings, and the police couldn't find any evidence that led them closer to the truth. Over time, the hope of finding Emily faded, and her case slowly became a cold one. But then, something incredible happened years later. That locket reappeared. What could this mean? Is Emily still alive? Did she leave the locket behind on purpose? Or has someone been holding onto it for all these years, knowing something about what really happened? The answers are out there, and in this video, We're going to dig deep into the mystery that has haunted Emily's loved ones for years. Together, we'll take a close look at the key players in this case, piece together the clues, and see if we can uncover the truth. But remember, this is no ordinary story. The deeper you go, the darker it gets. As we explore the pawn shop, the locket, and the people who may hold the answers, we'll uncover secrets that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Who is hiding the truth, and why? And will we ever get the closure that Emily's family so desperately needs? Before we dive in, let me ask you this. Do you believe in coincidences? Or do you think that everything happens for a reason? As you watch the story unfold, keep that question in the back of your mind. Because when you're dealing with a case like this, one where nothing is quite as it seems, the truth is never as simple as it first appears. Now, grab a seat, take a deep breath, and get ready for a story that's about to take you on a journey full of twists and turns, where the answers may not be what you expect, and the mystery will keep you guessing until the very end. You're going to want to stick around for this one because the moment we uncover the truth behind the locket, everything will change. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. But for now, let's take a closer look at Emily Parker's life, her disappearance, and the shocking revelation that has everyone questioning everything. It's time to get started, and believe me when I say you're about to discover something that will leave you speechless. Keep watching, and let's unravel this mystery together. The truth is closer than you think. Emily Parker was the kind of girl everyone noticed when she walked into a room. She wasn't the loudest or the most outgoing, but there was something about her, an unspoken presence that made her stand out. At 17, she was still finding her place in the world, trying to balance the typical teenage struggle with school, friends, and figuring out who she really was. On the surface, Emily seemed like just another high school senior, busy with homework and planning for life after graduation. She had her friends, her dreams, and that endless optimism that so many young people carry with them. But there were cracks beneath that picture-perfect exterior, things she kept hidden, things that only a few people ever really got to see. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Emily had been different. Not dramatically different, but enough to make those closest to her start wondering. Her best friend, Sarah, noticed that Emily had been pulling away. They'd always been inseparable, sharing everything from crushes to fears about the future. But lately, Emily had become more distant, even more secretive. She'd started spending more time alone, retreating to her room for hours after school, her eyes glued to her phone. When Sarah asked her about it, Emily would give vague answers or brush it off with a smile, but Sarah knew something was off. Then, there was the matter of her locket, something Emily never took off, no matter where she went or what she did. It was as if the locket was a part of her identity, like a silent companion that carried all her emotions, her memories, and her secrets. But one afternoon, not long before the class trip, Sarah noticed that Emily had been fiddling with the locket in a way she hadn't before, almost as though she were contemplating something heavy. When Sarah asked if everything was okay, Emily simply said, "I'm just thinking about the future." That was the last conversation they'd ever have. The class trip that Emily had gone on was supposed to be a celebration of the end of high school, a trip to the mountains where students could let off some steam before graduation. It was a well-planned event, with a whole group of friends, teachers, and chaperones along for the ride. Nothing about it seemed unusual at first. Emily, along with her classmates, had spent weeks looking forward to the adventure. But as the day of the trip approached, a few strange things started to happen. Emily's parents noticed she seemed oddly anxious about going. She packed her bags in silence, rarely speaking about it, and when they asked if she was excited for the trip, she would just nod and give a half-smile. Still, they chalked it up to pre-trip nerves. After all, high school was almost over, and Emily had always been the type to overthink things. On the day of the trip, everything seemed normal. Emily and her classmates boarded the bus and made their way to the destination, chatting and laughing along the way. But when the group arrived at the cabins in the mountains, something changed. Emily seemed to withdraw even further. She wandered off alone into the woods for a short walk, something she often did when she needed space to think. Her teacher, Mrs. Green, had seen her walking that way but didn't think much of it at the time. There was nothing out of the ordinary about it until Emily never returned. The search for Emily began almost immediately after her friends and classmates realized she was missing. Panic set in. Her friends called out her name, retracing their steps and trying to figure out where she could have gone. Teachers and chaperones searched the area, but the woods were vast, and Emily's absence was unsettlingly complete. The police were called, and soon, a full-scale search operation began. Helicopters flew overhead, and teams combed the forest day and night, but there was no sign of Emily. Her phone, wallet, and even her beloved locket were nowhere to be found. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Over the following days, the media coverage of Emily's disappearance grew, but despite the efforts of law enforcement, no leads came forward. Her family and friends were left reeling, desperate for answers, but the investigation turned up nothing. No clues, no suspects, just a girl who had slipped away from the world without explanation. Over time, the case grew cold, and the community moved on, but Emily's family never stopped hoping for closure. They never gave up searching, even when everyone else did. Then came the pawn shop. Years later, long after the investigation had stalled, a call came in to Emily's mother. It was from a pawn shop in the city, a place known for buying and selling second-hand items. The store manager had reported that a heart-shaped locket matching the description of the one Emily had been wearing when she disappeared had been brought in. At first, Emily's mother thought it was a sick joke. But when she saw the locket for herself, there was no denying it. It was hers. And yet, how had it ended up there? Had someone taken it from Emily? Had Emily herself left it behind for some reason? Or did this strange turn of events signify something far darker? The questions kept piling up, and with each passing day, the mystery deepened. Emily's mother, now filled with dread and uncertainty, tried to piece together the puzzle. She spoke to the pawn shop owner, but he couldn't provide much information. The person who had brought in the locket had been a young man, probably in his early 20s, who paid in cash and left in a hurry. He'd never come back to collect any money or make any inquiries about the item. His identity was unknown, and there were no security cameras in the area to provide a clue. At first glance, it seemed like just another weird coincidence. But as the weeks went by, Emily's mother began to notice things that didn't add up. The young man who brought in the locket had been seen at a local bar, talking to a group of people that Emily's friends recognized. One of them, Jake, had been one of the last to see Emily on the day she disappeared. He was known to have a temper and a reputation for trouble, but he was also a popular kid, charming, magnetic, and always in the center of things. Had Jake known something about Emily's disappearance? Could he have been involved, or was he just another person caught up in the aftermath of something darker? Suspicion also fell on Sarah, Emily's best friend. Though she had always been close to Emily, rumors started to swirl that Sarah had been hiding something. She'd been unusually quiet since Emily's disappearance, avoiding certain questions and showing signs of guilt. Had Sarah been hiding the truth all along, or was she just another victim of circumstance? After all, everyone grieves differently, and Sarah had always been more introverted, struggling with the weight of the situation in her own way. But the more people asked, the more inconsistencies began to surface. The tension in the air was palpable, and everyone started to wonder, who could really be trusted? The locket, the small, heart-shaped piece of jewelry, was no longer just a memory of a missing girl. It had become a symbol of everything that had gone wrong, of the lies and secrets hiding in plain sight. And now, with it in the hands of strangers, Emily's story was about to take an even darker turn. The truth was still out there, but would anyone be brave enough to uncover it? Or had the truth been buried so deep that it would never come to light? The pieces were scattered, and with each new revelation, the puzzle grew even more complicated. One thing was certain, Emily's disappearance wasn't just a random event. Something far more sinister was at play, and the locket, of all things, might just hold the key to unraveling it. Stay tuned, because as we dive deeper into the mystery, things are about to get a whole lot more unsettling. As Emily's mother, Claire, began to probe deeper into the mystery of the locket, something strange started happening. Things went missing. At first, it was small, insignificant items that she might have mislaid herself, but then it escalated. Her notes, photos, and even the police reports she had carefully collected over the years seemed to vanish without explanation. It was as if someone, or something, was deliberately trying to prevent her from uncovering the truth. Claire's frustration mounted, and the once clear path toward answers started to feel more like a maze, every corner leading to another dead end. One evening, as Claire was at her kitchen table, poring over the details of the pawnshop transaction, something truly chilling happened. Her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She answered, but there was only silence on the other end, just the faint sound of breathing. After a few moments, a voice broke the silence, a voice that sounded too familiar. "You need to stop," it said. "There are things you don't want to know. Trust me, some questions are better left unanswered." The line went dead before Claire could respond, leaving her stunned, her heart racing. Was it a prank? Or was someone close, trying to warn her off the trail? Her thoughts were interrupted when she saw a text message pop up on her phone. It was from Sarah. "We need to talk. It's important." That was strange. Claire hadn't heard from Sarah in months, not since the last time they'd spoken about Emily's disappearance. But this message, it felt urgent. When Claire called her back, Sarah's voice trembled on the other end. "You're digging in places you shouldn't, Claire. Trust me. There's more to this than you realize. Please, just stop." Claire was taken aback. Was Sarah trying to protect her from something? Or was she hiding something herself? The more Claire thought about it, the more she realized that Sarah had always been a little too quiet about Emily's disappearance. She had been Emily's best friend, yet Sarah had never been able to provide much insight into what had really happened that day. Sarah's own behavior in the years following Emily's disappearance seemed odd. She had distanced herself from the investigation, avoided talking about Emily, and seemed to steer clear of any uncomfortable questions. Had Sarah been hiding a secret all along? Was she trying to protect someone? Or worse, was she involved in Emily's disappearance in some way? Claire's mind raced as she tried to make sense of it all. She had to be careful, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that she was on the verge of something big. That's when she received the next blow. The pawn shop, the one that had held the key to Emily's locket, had suddenly gone out of business. Just like that. One day, it was open, and the next, the doors were locked, the windows boarded up. No warning. No explanation. Claire tried to get in touch with the owner, but his phone had been disconnected. She went to the building, hoping to find any remnants of the investigation, a clue, anything that could point her in the right direction. But the shop was empty, gutted out as if it had never existed. The only trace of the shop's past was a single piece of paper that had been left behind on the counter. A receipt, dated several days after the locket had been pawned, with a name on it, Jake Turner. The same Jake who had been seen with Emily on the last day she was seen alive. The same Jake who had always been on the fringes of the investigation, his name whispered but never fully examined. Now, with even more questions than before, Claire found herself standing at the edge of a deep, dark hole. The receipt felt like a sign, but she also knew it could be another dead end. Could Jake have been the one to pawn Emily's locket? What did it mean that his name had shown up in connection with it? And why had the pawn shop vanished so suddenly, as if it had never been there? The more she thought about it, the more she realized how connected everything was. Jake, Sarah, the missing locket, the strange warning calls. Each thread seemed to pull her in deeper, as though the closer she got to the truth, the more people were trying to stop her from discovering it. The next day, Claire decided to meet with Jake. She knew it was risky, but she had no choice. Her gut told her that he knew more than he was letting on. She found him working at a mechanic shop on the edge of town, his hands greasy from working on an old car. He didn't seem surprised when she approached him, but the unease in his eyes was unmistakable. "What do you want?" Jake asked, wiping his hands on a rag and leaning against the hood of a car. Claire didn't waste time. "I need to know about the locket. The one you pawned. You were seen there." Jake's face twitched, a brief moment of panic flashing across his features before he masked it with a cocky grin. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but the way he avoided eye contact told Claire everything she needed to know. She pressed him further. "Jake, I know you were with Emily the day she disappeared. I know you were close. What happened that day? Did you take her locket?" His eyes flicked to the ground, and for a split second, Claire thought he was going to break. But then he straightened up, his posture shifting, and his face hardened. "I don't have time for this," he muttered, turning back to the car. "Leave me alone, Claire. I'm not going to tell you anything." Claire knew she wasn't getting anything more out of him, but she also knew something had changed. The conversation had unsettled him, and that was enough to make her even more determined to find out the truth. She left the mechanic shop with more questions than answers. Who was Jake trying to protect? And why was he so desperate to keep quiet about Emily? As she drove away, she caught a glimpse of something in her rearview mirror, a car, blacked-out windows, following her at a distance. Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure if it was just her imagination, but it felt like someone was watching her, waiting for her to make the wrong move. Had someone been tailing her this whole time? She sped up, but the car kept pace with her, just far enough behind to remain unnoticed. She took a few sharp turns, hoping to lose it, but when she looked again, the car was still there. Suddenly, the reality of what she was dealing with hit Claire full force. Someone didn't want her getting too close to the truth. But who? And why? Was Emily's disappearance connected to something much bigger than anyone had ever realized? Was the truth buried so deeply that some people would go to any lengths to keep it hidden? And then, just as Claire thought she had lost the car, it pulled up beside her at a stoplight. The window rolled down, and she heard a voice she hadn't expected, a voice she knew all too well. "You're getting too close, Claire. It's time to stop." It was Sarah. But why was Sarah telling her to stop? What did she know that Claire didn't? Everything Claire had believed about Emily's disappearance was being turned upside down, and she still didn't know who to trust. Sarah, Jake, the mysterious phone calls, it was all one tangled mess, and the pieces didn't fit together. Was Sarah hiding something from her, or was she truly trying to protect her? Could Jake be the key to unraveling this, or was he part of a much larger conspiracy? The closer Claire got to the truth, the more danger she seemed to be in. And just as the light turned green, Sarah's car sped off, leaving Claire with a sense of dread sinking deep into her chest. The real question now was, how far would they go to keep her from finding the truth? And would Claire even survive long enough to uncover it? Stay tuned. The answers are just around the corner. Claire couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, and the unsettling encounter with Sarah at the stoplight had only heightened her anxiety. It was as if the walls were closing in, and every move she made was being tracked by unseen forces. She couldn't tell who she could trust anymore, not with Sarah's cryptic warning and Jake's refusal to speak. But what made her feel even more uneasy was how she wasn't the only one receiving strange messages. Just a few days after her confrontation with Jake, her daughter, Lily, who was only 10 years old, came running to her, her face pale and shaken. She was holding something tightly in her small hands, a crumpled piece of paper, its edges torn as though it had been hastily ripped from somewhere. Lily had found it in the backyard, near the swing set where she often played. Claire opened the note with trembling hands, her heart sinking as she read the words scrawled in messy handwriting, "You're getting too close. Leave it alone. Before it's too late." The chilling message was nearly identical to the one Claire had received just days before, and a wave of panic washed over her. How could Lily have found this note? Who could have left it for her? Was this connected to Emily's disappearance, or was it a warning meant for Claire herself? She immediately checked the backyard, looking for any sign of someone who might have been there. But there was nothing, no footprints, no trace of anyone having been around. The note seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, and Lily, her wide eyes filled with confusion, couldn't provide any answers. She had been playing alone when she found it, and hadn't seen anyone nearby. This new development sent Claire spiraling even further. Was someone trying to intimidate her, trying to get her to back off from the investigation? Or was this warning meant for Lily, meant to silence Claire by targeting the one person she loved most? As Claire pondered this, she was struck by the fact that she had never considered Lily to be part of the mystery, never even thought of the possibility that her daughter might be in danger. She had always believed that the only threat was to her own pursuit of the truth about Emily, but this note suggested otherwise. It felt like an attack, a deliberate move to unsettle her, and it left her questioning the motives of everyone around her. Could this be connected to the strange events she had been encountering? Was someone close to her, someone she trusted, intentionally trying to manipulate her? Or was there something much bigger at play that she still didn't fully understand? The unsettling sensation that she was being pulled deeper into a web of lies and deceit only grew stronger. The idea that her own daughter might somehow be caught up in this dark mystery was more than Claire could bear. But she couldn't afford to back down now, not when the stakes were this high. She had to keep digging, for both herself and for Emily, even if it meant risking everything she had. In the days that followed, Claire's investigation took another unexpected turn. As she continued to dig into the pawnshop's background, she discovered a new piece of evidence that seemed to contradict everything she had believed. A local security guard who worked near the pawnshop revealed that he had seen a woman entering the store the night before the locket was pawned. This woman, the guard claimed, was wearing a hooded jacket, and she appeared to be in a hurry, as if she didn't want to be noticed. The guard had paid little attention at the time, but when Claire showed him a photo of Sarah, the guard's face turned pale. "That's her," he said without hesitation. "She was there. I'm sure of it." Claire's heart pounded in her chest. This was the last thing she expected to hear. Sarah had been with Emily that day, and now it seemed as though Sarah was somehow connected to the locket's disappearance, or at least to the pawnshop in some way. But why would Sarah be in such a hurry to pawn it? What was she hiding? Was Sarah involved in Emily's disappearance, or was there another explanation? The thought that Sarah might have had something to do with the disappearance felt like a gut punch. It was one thing to suspect that people close to her were withholding information, but it was something entirely different to imagine that they might be involved in a cover-up, in a conspiracy to keep the truth hidden. Still, Claire couldn't be sure. The guard's identification of Sarah was unsettling, but it wasn't concrete proof. Sarah had always been quiet about what happened after Emily's disappearance, and maybe that was just her way of coping. Or maybe, just maybe, Sarah was hiding something far darker than anyone had imagined. The idea of confronting Sarah about the guard's claim was terrifying, but Claire knew it was the only way to get closer to the truth. But when she reached out to Sarah again, she was met with a strange response. Sarah didn't answer her phone. Instead, Claire received another message, this time from an unknown number. "You're digging in places you shouldn't, Claire. You won't like what you find. Drop it." The threat was more direct than the others, and the cold, impersonal nature of the message left Claire shaken to her core. It wasn't just a warning now, it was an ultimatum. At this point, Claire couldn't ignore the feeling that she was being pulled into something far bigger than she had ever imagined. Everything she had believed about Emily's disappearance was being questioned. The people she trusted were turning out to be more elusive, more mysterious, than she had ever realized. The closer she got to the truth, the more dangerous it seemed to become. And now, with Lily's safety at risk, Claire felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure of whether to take the leap or step back. The truth was just beyond reach, but every time she got closer, something or someone tried to stop her. It was becoming clear that the forces working against her weren't just about Emily anymore. The investigation had taken on a life of its own, and Claire was caught in the middle of something far darker than she had ever thought possible. As she sat alone that night, staring at the stack of papers on her desk, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that someone she knew, was watching her every move. She could hear the echo of the phone call from Sarah, the eerie warning that had come just hours before. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized that Sarah wasn't just another victim in this story. She was part of the puzzle. But how? What role had she played in all of this? Could she be the key to everything? Or was she part of the elaborate deception? Was Sarah trying to protect Claire from something even worse, or was she one of the people trying to bury the truth? In the end, Claire didn't have the answers, only more questions. And the most haunting question of all was this: what had Emily discovered that was so dangerous, so powerful, that people were willing to go to these lengths to keep it hidden? The stakes were higher now, and Claire knew that if she didn't get the answers soon, she might never get the chance to uncover them. The truth was out there, waiting. But would it ever come to light, or would it be buried forever, along with the secrets that had driven everyone to the edge? The next morning, Claire woke to a cold, uneasy feeling. It wasn't just the constant weight of the mystery she was chasing, the unanswered questions that loomed over her every move, it was something darker. Something felt wrong. She couldn't quite pinpoint what it was, but the atmosphere had shifted. Every creak of the house, every sound of the wind outside, every glance in the rearview mirror felt like a sign. It was the type of feeling you get when you know you're being watched, but the sense of surveillance is so constant, so inescapable, that it becomes unbearable. Her pulse quickened as she thought about Lily and the note she had found in the backyard. What had it all meant? Was her daughter being targeted by the same people who were keeping her from finding out the truth about Emily? The paranoia had set in. Claire tried to shake it off, reminding herself that she had been on edge for days now. But as she stood in the kitchen, a cup of coffee in hand, she heard something that made her freeze: footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate. Her breath caught in her throat. She rushed to the window, peering through the curtains, but there was nothing. Just the empty street. No car parked across from her house, no one standing in the shadows. She opened the door cautiously, stepping out onto the porch, trying to convince herself that it was just her imagination, but the air felt thick, oppressive. For a brief moment, she considered that maybe she had been too focused on the investigation. Maybe she was overthinking, allowing the weight of the mystery to cloud her judgment. But as she glanced around once more, her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. A new message, this time, from an unknown number. "You're getting closer than you think. You should stop while you still can." The message was short, its tone cold and final, and it left her reeling. Claire's heart raced. Who was this? Was it connected to the mysterious warning calls she'd been receiving? It had to be. But how did this person know exactly what she was doing, what she had been investigating? Her mind raced, and her body tensed. She felt the sharp sting of fear, a deep, unrelenting anxiety that clutched at her chest. But she knew she couldn't stop now, not when she had come so far. Not when everything seemed to be pointing her toward one undeniable truth: someone was actively working to keep her from finding out what happened to Emily. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a random series of events. It was a deliberate campaign of fear, meant to throw her off track, to scare her into submission. And it was working. But just as quickly as the fear began to tighten its grip, another, more pressing worry emerged: Lily. Her daughter had been an innocent bystander until now, yet Claire couldn't shake the feeling that the threat had shifted. It wasn't just Claire who was in danger anymore, it was her child. The message was a warning, sure, but the deeper she dug, the more her fears grew. Whoever had sent that note to Lily had crossed a line, and Claire couldn't sit back and allow anyone to hurt her daughter. She rushed to Lily's room, checking on her for the third time that morning, but Lily wasn't there. The bed was empty. Panic set in. Claire's heart skipped a beat. She ran to the bathroom, the kitchen, calling Lily's name, but there was no answer. Her breath caught in her throat as she checked the backyard again, the same place where the note had been found. The yard was empty, just as it had been earlier that morning. But then she saw something that sent a chill through her entire body: a small, familiar object lying on the ground near the fence. It was Lily's favorite stuffed animal, the one she had carried with her since she was a toddler. Claire's stomach lurched as she rushed over, picking it up. Her fingers trembled as she examined it, her mind racing through all the possible scenarios. How had it gotten there? Had Lily left it there on purpose? Or had someone placed it there as a message, a sign that they had been watching, waiting, and now, they had her daughter? With her heart hammering in her chest, Claire dialed 911, her voice shaky as she explained the situation. But as she spoke, she felt a creeping sense of dread in her gut, an overwhelming feeling that something was terribly wrong. The 911 operator assured her that help was on the way, but Claire didn't feel any relief. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was too late, that whatever had been going on, whatever forces were working against her, were now coming after her family, taking things to an entirely new level of danger. She stood there, holding Lily's stuffed animal, trying to force herself to remain calm, but every instinct in her screamed that time was running out. Minutes felt like hours as she waited for the police to arrive, but when they finally did, Claire's worst fear was confirmed. There were no signs of Lily anywhere. No footprints, no clues. It was as though she had simply vanished into thin air. The officers combed through the yard, the house, and even the surrounding area, but there was nothing. No trace of her daughter. It was as if she had been taken, quietly, without a sound. And that's when Claire understood, with terrifying clarity, that she was now in a race against time. Whoever was behind all of this, whoever was pulling the strings, had moved from subtle threats to something far more sinister. That night, unable to sleep, Claire sat in the dark, the weight of the situation pressing down on her chest. Every noise, every shadow, every creak of the floorboards made her jump. It felt as if the house itself was closing in on her, suffocating her with its silence. Was someone inside? Was someone watching her right now, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? She reached for her phone, but before she could unlock it, a message popped up on the screen. You shouldn't have kept digging. Now look what you've done. It was signed with a name she hadn't seen in years, David, Emily's stepfather. The words hit her like a bolt of lightning. David had been out of the picture for years, after the divorce with Emily's mother, but he had always been a shadowy figure in Emily's life. What was he doing back in the picture now? Why was he reaching out to her at this exact moment? And why did his message feel like a final warning, one that seemed to say that things were about to get far worse? Claire stared at the message, trying to make sense of it. David had been known for his anger issues, his volatile temper, but could he have had something to do with Emily's disappearance all those years ago? And if so, why was he resurfacing now? Was he part of the group trying to intimidate her into stopping the investigation? Or was he someone else entirely, a pawn in a much bigger game? The implications were terrifying, and the more Claire thought about it, the more questions piled up, each more disturbing than the last. But there was no time to think. She had no answers. No clear path forward. The darkness surrounding her, the weight of the unknown, was crushing, and every step she took seemed to draw her deeper into a labyrinth with no escape. As she sat there, clutching her phone, the world around her felt like it was closing in. She didn't know who to trust, who to turn to. But one thing was certain now, whoever was behind this, whoever was responsible for Emily's disappearance, for Lily's abduction, was playing a much bigger game than Claire had ever realized. And she was no longer just a bystander in this twisted story. She was a target. And the clock was ticking. The answers were out there, hidden somewhere in the web of lies and deceit. But how far would Claire have to go to find them? And what would she lose in the process? Claire's world felt like it was slowly crumbling around her. She had spent days, weeks even, chasing a truth that seemed just out of reach, only to be met with dead ends and growing threats. Every clue she uncovered, every message, every cryptic word, had pulled her deeper into a web of lies and fear. But in the midst of the chaos, there had always been something she couldn't quite put her finger on, a nagging sensation that there was more to this than she had been led to believe. The twists kept coming, yes, but none of them prepared her for what was about to hit. It happened the following night, after the police had left and she was once again alone in her house, the silence more suffocating than ever. Claire's mind couldn't rest, she was tangled in a mess of thoughts, trying to untangle the threads of her investigation, but they only seemed to tighten with each passing moment. That's when the knock came at the door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively reached for the kitchen knife, her hand trembling slightly. Who could be out there at this hour? She checked the peephole but saw nothing, just the shadow of someone standing on the other side. Her instincts told her not to open it. But something inside her also pushed her to answer, to find out who dared to come to her door after everything that had happened. When she finally swung the door open, her breath caught in her throat. There, standing in front of her, was Sarah. The same Sarah who had warned her not to dig too deep. The same Sarah who had been there the day Emily disappeared. Claire didn't know whether to be relieved or furious. For a moment, she couldn't speak, her mind was racing. Why was Sarah here? What did she want now, after all the secrets she had kept, after all the cryptic messages and half-truths? Sarah's face was pale, her eyes wide and desperate, as if she'd seen something that had shattered her own world. She wasn't the composed, quiet figure Claire had known. This was someone desperate, someone on the edge of breaking. I couldn't stay away, Sarah's voice cracked as she stepped inside, her eyes darting nervously toward the windows. I think I've made a terrible mistake. I have to tell you everything. Claire felt a chill run down her spine. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, the tension so thick in the room it was almost suffocating. She closed the door behind her, locking it instinctively. Sarah had always been a shadow in Emily's life, But now, standing before Claire, she was an enigma, her presence more unsettling than ever. Sarah looked over her shoulder again, as though making sure no one was listening. "It wasn't what you think," she said quickly, her words tumbling out in a rushed whisper. "It's not who you think." She stopped, closing her eyes, as if steeling herself. "I should have told you this before, but I didn't want to believe it either. I couldn't, not until I had proof." Claire's mind was spinning. "Proof of what?" she demanded, her patience running thin. "You're not making any sense. What happened to Emily? Why was she?" "Emily didn't disappear because of the people you've been chasing. It wasn't some random act, Claire," Sarah interrupted, her face suddenly a mix of fear and regret. "It wasn't the pawn shop, or the notes, or anything else you've uncovered. It's all part of the story, but it's not the real story. The real truth is much darker than you can imagine." Claire felt her pulse spike. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for, the moment the pieces of the puzzle should fall into place. But what Sarah was saying didn't make sense. If Emily hadn't disappeared the way Claire had thought, then what was she talking about? What could possibly be worse than everything Claire had already discovered? "I should have told you the day Emily went missing, but I didn't know how," Sarah said, stepping closer, her voice trembling. "You wouldn't have believed me then. But you have to now. You have to understand that Emily, she didn't just disappear. She ran away." The words hit Claire like a punch to the gut. "What?" she gasped, her mind racing. "No, that's not possible. Emily would never." "I know how it sounds," Sarah cut her off. "But listen to me. Emily had been planning it for weeks. She was scared, Claire. She was running from something much bigger than either of us. Something no one could see coming, something that was already happening. I didn't know all the details at the time, but I found out. I found out everything." "Everything? What are you talking about?" Claire's voice cracked as the walls around her seemed to close in. She had been hunting for answers, convinced that the truth was hidden behind closed doors, behind veils of secrecy. But now Sarah was telling her something completely different, something that shattered everything Claire thought she knew about her daughter's disappearance. "The night she disappeared, she came to me. She was frantic. She told me she had to go, that it wasn't safe. She had evidence, Claire, evidence that would ruin everything." Sarah's hands shook as she spoke, and she grabbed Claire's arm urgently. "I didn't want to believe her. I didn't want to be involved in any of it. But Emily begged me to help her. She said if I didn't, she wouldn't be safe. She had proof that someone had been manipulating everything, her life, her choices, everything. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. You've been going after the wrong people." Claire felt her breath catch in her throat. She had been so certain of the story she had built in her mind, so certain that she was on the right path, but now Sarah was telling her it had all been a lie. Emily hadn't disappeared. She had run away. But why? And why hadn't anyone told her? "You're saying she ran away because she was trying to expose something? Something that dangerous?" Claire asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Claire's blood ran cold. It was happening. Whatever had been set into motion all those weeks ago, it was unfolding now. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together in a way that made Claire's skin crawl. And she knew, in that moment, that no matter what choice she made, there would be no way to walk away from this unscathed. The truth was right in front of her, but so was the danger. And it was growing, closing in on her faster than she could ever imagine. She had no choice but to face it head-on, even if it meant losing everything. Even if it meant losing herself. The night stretched on, heavy with an unsettling sense of inevitability. Claire stood frozen in the doorway, staring at Lily, the little girl clutching her stuffed animal, eyes wide with fear. Every instinct in Claire's body screamed that something far worse than she had ever imagined was unfolding before her. The mystery of Emily's disappearance, the twisted trail of clues, the pawn shop, the threats, it all felt like a blur now, as if the pieces of the puzzle she had so desperately tried to put together were spinning out of control. "Mom, they're watching us," Lily repeated, her voice barely a whisper, shaking with a fear that Claire couldn't ignore. Claire's heart raced. The room felt suffocating, as if the walls were closing in, the air thick with a kind of pressure she couldn't shake. Every decision, Every choice she had made up to this point seemed to have led her to this terrifying moment. She had thought she was unraveling the truth, but now she realized the truth was far bigger than she could have ever imagined. This wasn't just about Emily. It wasn't just about her or Lily. This conspiracy, this web of lies and manipulation, was vast, reaching farther than anyone had ever anticipated. Claire's phone buzzed again, interrupting her thoughts. She looked down, and her hands trembled as she saw the name on the screen, David. She wanted to ignore it, to throw the phone across the room and forget about everything, but something about the urgency in his calls made her pause. She answered without saying a word. "Claire, you need to listen to me," David's voice crackled through the phone, breathless and frantic. "It's worse than you think. You don't know who you're dealing with. They're everywhere, people you trust, people you've known for years. It's not just one person, Claire. It's a network. They've been watching you this whole time, and now they know you're getting too close. They won't stop until they get rid of you." The air around Claire seemed to freeze, the weight of his words sinking into her like a stone. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice low and trembling, the panic rising in her chest. "Who are you talking about? Who's behind this? I can't say more over the phone, but listen closely." David's voice was nearly frantic now. "People you think are on your side, people you trust, they've been part of this from the beginning. Your investigation wasn't a threat to them at first, but now it is. And if you don't stop digging, they'll come for you and for Lily." "David, who? Tell me. I need to know." But before Claire could finish, the line went dead. A cold dread settled over her as she stared at the phone, realizing that she was more alone than ever. And she understood, in that instant, that David wasn't just talking about the unknown figures she had been chasing. This wasn't some isolated plot. This was a deep, far-reaching conspiracy. A system of manipulation and control that had taken root in her life without her ever realizing it. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door, sharp and insistent. It sent a shock of adrenaline through her body, and she immediately moved toward the door, her heart racing. Was this it? Were they here? Was David right all along? Lily stepped back, her tiny hand gripping Claire's as she looked up at her mother, fear in her eyes. Claire swallowed hard, trying to calm the rising storm inside her. She had to make a choice, and she had to make it fast. Whatever was on the other side of that door, it was going to change everything. Claire opened the door slowly, the hinges creaking in the quiet of the night. But when she looked outside, there was no one there. Just a small envelope on the doorstep, sealed with black wax. Claire's hands shook as she bent down to pick it up, and as she tore it open, her eyes scanned the short, chilling message inside. "Stop digging. You don't know who you're really looking for. If you want to keep Lily safe, walk away now. This is your only warning." Claire felt a chill crawl down her spine. This wasn't just a threat anymore. This was a warning, one meant to control her. Someone wanted to silence her, to stop her from uncovering whatever hidden truth had been buried for so long. The stakes had never been higher, and the darkness of the situation loomed over her like a storm she couldn't outrun. But just as she stood there, holding the letter, the realization hit her like a thunderclap. Someone close to her, someone she had trusted, someone who had been in her life for years, was behind all of this. She had felt it before, the nagging doubt, the subtle signs that something wasn't right, but now it all clicked into place. This wasn't a random conspiracy. This wasn't just a few rogue individuals working in the shadows. This was something deliberate, orchestrated, and it had been going on for far longer than she realized. Her mind raced as she thought of the people in her life who could be involved, who had been involved from the start. David's cryptic warnings, the strange behavior from friends and colleagues, the way they all seemed to know more than they were letting on, it all pointed to one terrifying truth. They were in on it. Every one of them. Claire's breath quickened. She knew she couldn't trust anyone anymore. Not David, not Sarah, not even the people she had considered allies in her quest for the truth. The conspiracy was bigger, deeper, and more dangerous than she could have imagined. And it wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about her. It was about Lily. And it was about something far more insidious than a simple disappearance. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a number she didn't recognize. It could be another warning. Another threat. But Claire's instinct screamed that this was the moment. The moment she had been dreading, but also the one she had been preparing for. She answered, her voice tight with fear and resolve. "Claire." The voice on the other end was smooth, calm, too calm. "You've made a grave mistake by continuing this investigation. But there's still time. Walk away now, and you and your daughter can walk away from this unscathed. Keep digging, and you will never see the light of day again." Claire's blood ran cold as she recognized the voice. It was someone she thought she could trust, someone who had been in her life for years. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow, and for a split second, her mind went blank, unable to process the weight of the truth. "I won't stop," Claire said, her voice shaking with a mix of terror and determination. "I will never stop until I find the truth." The voice on the other end sighed, almost regretfully. "Then there's nothing more to say, Claire. You've made your choice." As the call ended, Claire's world seemed to tilt on its axis. Whoever she thought she could rely on was gone now, turned against her in a heartbeat. The people she trusted, the people she had been trying to protect, she couldn't trust them anymore. They were all part of this. All of them. She turned to Lily, her heart breaking as she realized just how far this had gone. How far it would go if she didn't act. But no matter what it took, no matter what price she had to pay, she was going to find the truth. She had to. There was no other choice. And as she moved toward the door, her mind already set on the next step in her search, Claire understood one thing. She had stepped into a game where the rules were stacked against her, where the stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. And now, there was no turning back. The tension was unbearable, and Claire could feel it in her bones as she stepped deeper into the abandoned warehouse. The vast, empty space echoed with every footstep, the floor creaking beneath her weight as she moved forward. This was it. She had traced the final piece of the puzzle here, to this cold, forgotten building on the outskirts of town. Every instinct in her body screamed that something was about to go horribly wrong, but she had no choice now. The people behind this, the ones who had taken Emily and tried to silence her, whoever they were, had finally made a mistake. They'd underestimated her resolve, her need for answers, and now, she was closing in on the truth. No more distractions, no more false leads. It was just Claire now, alone in the dark with the ghosts of the past and the shadows of those who would do anything to keep her from uncovering the truth. She had barely stepped inside when a door slammed shut behind her, the sound so loud it made her heart leap into her throat. Claire spun around, her breath quickening, her heart racing. She wasn't alone. She knew it. She had been followed, but by who? She didn't have time to think about it. The air was thick with the promise of danger, the quiet broken only by the sound of distant footsteps. Then, a voice, calm, cold, and chilling, cut through the silence. "Did you really think you could escape it all, Claire? Did you think you could outrun the truth?" Her pulse quickened as she recognized the voice, and for a moment, it felt like the ground beneath her feet was shifting. David. The one person she had trusted. The one person she had believed was trying to help her. But now, standing in front of her, he wasn't the man she had known. His face was cold, his eyes narrowed with an intensity that made her skin crawl. This was the face of someone who had buried their humanity for a cause, someone who had been playing her all along. The betrayal hit harder than anything she had felt before. "David, no," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. You were helping me. You were on my side. How could you?" He stepped closer, his face hardening, his eyes never leaving hers. "You were never on my side, Claire. You were just a pawn in a much bigger game. And you were too blind to see it. But it ends tonight. It all ends tonight." The room seemed to close in around her, her breath coming faster as the reality of what was happening hit her like a punch to the gut. All this time, all the clues, all the warnings, David had been part of it. He was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, the one who had been feeding her false hope, steering her down a path that only led to this moment. The man she had trusted with her daughter, the man she had believed in, was working against her the entire time. "You're not getting away with this," Claire said, her voice trembling, but her resolve starting to harden. "You won't. I'll stop you, David. I'll make sure everyone knows the truth. Everyone will know what you've done." David's lips curled into a thin, mocking smile. The truth. There's no truth left for you to uncover. You're too late. You've already lost. Before Claire could react, he reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, folded piece of paper. He held it out in front of her, watching her carefully, as if waiting for her to take it. Hesitant, Claire grabbed the paper, her eyes scanning the words written on it. It was a list, names, dates, places. It took her a moment to process, to connect the dots, but when she did, it hit her like a wave crashing over her. The names on the list weren't just random. They were connected to Emily. They were connected to the people who had been involved in her disappearance all those years ago. The dates matched the day Emily vanished. The locations, places Claire had visited in her search for the truth. Everything, every piece of the puzzle, all pointed back to one horrifying conclusion. This wasn't just about Emily. This wasn't just about her daughter. This was a network, an underground operation involving more people than she could have ever imagined. And David was at the center of it all. No, Claire whispered, the words choking in her throat. You're lying. This isn't real. This can't be happening. David stepped closer, his smile growing wider. You still don't get it, do you? It's bigger than you. Bigger than me. Bigger than anyone you've ever known. The people behind all of this, they control everything. They control who gets to live and who disappears. They control who gets to be forgotten. Claire's mind spun, the realization hitting her like a ton of bricks. All this time, she had been chasing ghosts, believing that she was uncovering the truth. But the truth was far darker than she could have ever imagined. The conspiracy wasn't just about a few bad people, it was an intricate, massive network, operating in the shadows, pulling strings, orchestrating disappearances. And David was the one who had been facilitating it all. He wasn't just a traitor. He was a key player in something far more insidious. You can't do this, Claire said, her voice breaking. You won't get away with it. I'll stop you. I swear to God, I'll stop you. David's laugh echoed through the empty warehouse, hollow and cold. You're too late, Claire. You've already walked into my trap. There's no one left to save you. No one left to stop me. Claire's heart pounded as she realized the gravity of his words. There was no way out. The walls were closing in. She was standing in front of a man who had orchestrated everything, a man who had controlled the narrative all along. But the fire in Claire's chest burned hotter than ever. She had come too far, sacrificed too much, to stop now. She wasn't going to let him win. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, Claire lunged forward, knocking the paper from his hand and reaching for the flashlight she had tucked in her belt. She swung it toward him, the beam of light flashing across his face, temporarily blinding him. For a split second, David faltered, but just as quickly, he recovered, grabbing for the weapon he had been concealing, a small handgun. Time seemed to slow. Claire's mind raced, her body moving instinctively. She dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding the barrel of the gun as David fired a shot. The sound of the gunshot rang out, echoing in the vast, empty space, but Claire was already moving, her body low, her mind focused on the only thing that mattered, survival. David's eyes were wild now, the mask of control slipping, his panic evident. He was desperate. And that desperation made him dangerous. Claire dove behind a stack of crates, her pulse hammering in her ears as she scrambled to her feet, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had to think. She had to find a way out of this. But just as she was about to make her move, a voice came from the shadows, a voice she hadn't expected, a voice that made her blood run cold. Claire, don't. She froze. And there, standing in the doorway, was Lily, her daughter. Her innocent little girl. And she was holding the gun. Claire's heart stopped as she saw the cold, blank expression on Lily's face. The same face that had once been full of laughter and love. But now, there was only emptiness. And in that moment, Claire realized the unthinkable. David hadn't just manipulated her. He had turned Lily into his pawn too. Lily wasn't just a victim in this nightmare, she had been a part of it from the start. Lily, no, Claire gasped, her voice breaking. Please, don't. But Lily didn't lower the gun. Instead, her expression hardened, and the words that came out of her mouth next were colder than anything Claire had ever heard. It's too late, Mom. You never should have kept digging. The world around Claire seemed to freeze in that moment, as if everything, the fear, the betrayal, the endless twists, had come to a standstill. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her daughter, the one person she had fought to protect, was standing in front of her, holding the gun with a quiet, unnerving calmness that made Claire's heart shatter. Every inch of her body screamed to reach out to Lily, to run and take her far away from this nightmare. But deep down, she knew it was too late. The truth had finally revealed itself, and it was more brutal than she could ever have imagined. Lily's eyes, once full of innocence and trust, were now devoid of warmth. They were cold, calculating, and older than they had any right to be. The gun was steady in her tiny hands, the muzzle pointing directly at Claire's chest. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Claire couldn't understand what had happened, how it had all gone so wrong. Her mind was a mess of confusion and grief. She had spent so long looking for the truth, but now that she had found it, the cost was more than she could bear. "Lily, please," Claire whispered, her voice cracking. "You don't have to do this. I'll fix everything. We can go home. We can leave this behind." But Lily didn't speak. The only sound was the quiet click of the gun's safety being taken off, a sound that echoed through Claire's very soul. Claire's thoughts raced, trying to process everything she had learned, the conspiracy, the people involved, David's manipulation, and now Lily, her own daughter, a pawn in this twisted game. How had it all spiraled out of control so fast? How had she been blind to the truth for so long? And then, just as Claire was about to speak again, to beg, to do anything to save Lily from this darkness, the silence was shattered by a loud bang, a single gunshot. But it wasn't Lily's gun that fired. It wasn't even Claire's. The shot came from behind, and as the echo of the gunshot filled the warehouse, both Claire and Lily turned toward the sound. David stumbled forward, his face twisted in a grimace of shock and pain, his hand clutching his chest where blood began to seep through his shirt. He collapsed to the floor, his eyes wide with disbelief, as the figure that had shot him stepped into the dim light from the shadows. It was Sarah. Claire's best friend. The one person she thought had been her ally, the one who had appeared just as helpless as Claire in this web of deceit. But now, standing over David's crumpled body, Sarah looked different. Cold. Determined. Her eyes weren't filled with fear or guilt, there was no hesitation in them at all. Only resolve. "I'm sorry, Claire," Sarah said, her voice tight with emotion but steady. "I couldn't let him hurt you anymore. I should have told you sooner, but I couldn't. I couldn't betray you like that." She looked down at David's body, her lips curling in disgust. "I never meant for it to go this far. But when I saw Lily, when I saw how much they'd manipulated her, I knew I had to act." Claire's mind reeled. Her best friend. The one person she had leaned on, the person she had trusted with every detail of her life. It had been Sarah all along, hidden in the shadows, playing a game of her own. She had been there from the beginning, watching, listening, keeping quiet as the conspiracy twisted its way into Claire's life. Sarah had been the one to help David keep the secrets hidden, to make sure Claire kept walking down the path without ever suspecting what was really going on. But now, standing in front of her, Sarah seemed to carry a weight that Claire hadn't noticed before. She wasn't the person she thought she knew. And as Claire stood there, piecing the story together in her mind, the pieces finally clicked into place. Sarah hadn't just been helping Claire. She had been helping David. Helping the conspiracy. And now, after everything, she was making her own choices. She was trying to undo the damage she had done, but the cost was high. David was gone, but so was any sense of trust. Claire's heart shattered all over again, not just for herself but for Lily. What had happened to her daughter, to the little girl Claire had fought so hard to protect, who was standing now in front of her, caught in a nightmare she didn't fully understand? The realization hit Claire with the full weight of its cruelty. The manipulation had been so subtle, so deep, that even Lily had become part of it, and now, standing there, she wasn't just a victim anymore, she was an accomplice, whether she realized it or not. Claire reached for Lily, her voice shaking with emotion, her hands trembling. "Lily, it's okay. It's over now. You're safe. We'll fix this. I promise you, we'll fix it. You don't have to be part of this anymore." Lily's gaze flickered, confusion creeping into her expression as the fog of manipulation slowly started to lift. She looked from Claire to Sarah, to David's lifeless body, and then back to Claire, her hands slowly lowering the gun. "Mom," she whispered, her voice small and broken. "What's happening? What did I do?" Claire felt the weight of those words settle over her, like a crushing weight. "It's not your fault, Lily," she whispered, pulling her daughter into an embrace, holding her tightly as if trying to shield her from everything. From the lies, from the pain, from the darkness that had consumed their lives for far too long. "It's not your fault." Sarah watched them, her face unreadable. There was no triumph in her eyes, no satisfaction in seeing David's body on the floor. There was only a deep, quiet regret. "I never wanted this for you, Claire. I never wanted it for Lily. But when you get caught in something like this, it's hard to know how to escape." Claire nodded slowly, her emotions tangled in a messy knot. She didn't know what to feel anymore: relief that the truth had finally come out, anger that it had taken so long, sorrow for all the time that had been lost. But one thing was clear: the battle wasn't over. The truth had been uncovered, but the consequences of it, the damage, the lies, the people still out there pulling strings, would haunt them for a long time. "I'll help you," Sarah said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll help you fix this. I'll help you make sure this never happens again." Claire hesitated, her heart torn. She wanted to believe Sarah, to believe that they could rebuild from this. But the wounds were too deep. The scars of everything they had been through, everything that had been taken from them, would never fade. And then, as if on cue, the silence was broken again. A low hum, the sound of an engine far in the distance, grew louder and louder. Claire looked toward the sound, and for a moment, her heart skipped a beat. The car headlights cut through the darkness, and the shadow of another figure appeared in the doorway. Someone new. Someone she hadn't expected. Someone who had been watching them all along. But this time, Claire wasn't afraid. This time, she was ready. The story wasn't over. And somewhere, in the shadows, the real answers still waited. But Claire was done running. She had come too far to stop now. And as she stood there, with Lily in her arms and Sarah by her side, the mystery was far from solved, but one thing was clear: no matter what it took, Claire would see it through to the end. The truth would come out, no matter the cost. And as the screen slowly faded to black, one final thought lingered in the air, unanswered but ever present. What was the price of knowing the truth?